darling viewers, it's Jen here at Check Her Joy, and this time I'm reviewing Artemis by Andy Weir. This is a science fiction heist book set on the moon, following a female character who's a bit of a scoundrel. She's kind of like a female Han Solo, which I was digging about this book. It is really hard not to read this and compare it to Andy Weir's first book, The Martian. They are both science fiction. They are both very heavy science-based and about survival on these very hostile environments, The Martian being on Mars and Artemis being on the moon, where there is also not a strong atmosphere and you can't breathe. This definitely plays strongly with gravity and the makeup of the actual, planet and everything. So I really loved the science in it, but it's also pretty well explained. I have a strong enough science background to be like, hey, this is amazing for the science. But also, I don't think anything's in here too badly where you wouldn't, understand what was happening. They also both have really funny main characters. Jazz is a bit more cheesy and sarcastic. And I think that's about the end of the comparisons between these two books. So if you liked The Martian, you might also like Artemis, and vice versa. But I definitely think that Mark Watney in The Martian is the overall more likable character. He's like the human out on his own, and he's done everything right, and he's the astronaut, and it's really hard not to love Mark Watney. Whereas Jazz, I adore her, but I definitely see why some people kinda hate her. So getting into the title of this book, it is set on the moon. It is specifically set in the first city on the moon, the first moon colony of Artemis. It is set up as a bunch of domes. So each dome is really, really big and like a city block almost, I think roughly. And I love the fact that each dome has its own personality and what's in there. There's also the Apollo 11 Visitor Center. So you can take a really high-speed train from the Apollo 11 Visitor Center to Artemis and go back and forth. And this is also a strong historical site. It's the first place where the moon landing happened. Ta-da! There is our setting. It's the moon. It's a hostile environment. Lots of things could kill you. Pressure, lack of oxygen, starting a fire would be disastrous. So survival is a huge part of this book. But mostly it's about Jazz being a little bit of a criminal. Actually, a pretty big criminal. Going to our main character, Jazz, she has grown up on the moon. Basically, I think since she was 12 or something. She and her father immigrated there. Her father is this welder and a craftsman. And basically, the moon has these two very distinct social circles. There are all the really rich people who are either there vacationing to be like, hey, I took vacation on the moon. What did you do? Show off, have the experience. And some of them retire and go live on the moon, or they have businesses and they run casinos on the moon. But then there is this lower class of workers, the people who make everything happen. The servers, the people who work maintenance, the people who do the taking people out on the surface, the EVAs. So there's definitely this whole system set up of lower workers, of this poor families and people who work there. And Jazz grew up on the moon. She went to school on the moon. She pretty much has lived most of her life on the moon. She remembers a little bit of living on Earth, and specifically in Saudi Arabia, where her father is from. But mostly she's just a citizen of the moon. This is her home. This is her place. She knows it. She knows it inside and out. I mean, it's kind of a small city. And she knows how it works, and she knows how to work around everything. And Jazz has been working as a delivery person, as a porter, helping transport stuff because you need to import supplies. The moon is not self-sustaining. So there's this huge trade of sending supplies to the moon and the moon sending stuff back to Earth. But mostly the economy on Artemis is supported by the tourists. And so Jazz's job is partly to move luggage around, but also partly to move the supplies so that the city works. It is a really small town since it is just these 5 little bubbles, 5 blocks basically. So Jazz knows pretty much everybody, which I loved, seeing her insight into who all these other characters were. But she's also very creative and very smart, and she's figured out that she can smuggle things from Earth to the moon. So she has a buddy down on Earth who is helping her out and storing stuff, and she's got a few other people helping her. And she makes a pretty good living smuggling things that wouldn't necessarily be allowed. Stuff like alcohol or cigars, which are banned because they're flammable, are particularly lucrative. And so we see her skirting the edge of not only what is morally allowed within the society, which doesn't have that many morals to begin with. It's a society that kind of pretty much just lets everybody do their own thing, which is kind of cool. Like, her dad is super religious, like, I say he's Muslim. But some people are really religious, and then other people have, like, no faith whatsoever. Jazz kind of falls into the, like, not sure there's anything out there. But Jazz has figured out how to do the smuggling, and so she's got this loose morals, but also the fact that she's smuggling things that are kind of dangerous and could end up killing tons of people if they went wrong, like having the alcohol and the smoking. It's not great in a city where you're worried about pressure and there's really nowhere to go if there's a fire. Like some places, like her dad's workshop, since he does welding, have like rooms that like automatically seal off if there's a fire. And so it's possible to do this stuff, but also it's kind of reckless. We get to kind of see the underside of Artemis society, which I enjoyed. And Jazz as a character is really kind of cheesy and snarky. She makes a lot of jokes. Usually they're not terribly funny, but the fact that she's enjoying them also makes it enjoyable. There is kind of a problem with Jazz's character being too much of a stereotype at times and sexist. Like, not Jazz being sexist, but like Andy Weir's writing comes off as very sexist in here. She talks about sex a lot and her sexuality to a point that I'm pretty sure most women wouldn't. I mean, Jazz is like a 20-something-year-old woman, and this is a small community, and she's probably sex deprived, and if you have a high libido, maybe, but also, like, I think that most people think about sex that constantly, but some of the instances of talking about sex are just, like, cringeworthy. Like, there is a reusable condom that gets brought up multiple times. Like, the first time, like, oh, that's a pretty cool idea. All right. But then her friend who gives it to her is kind of creepy and is like, hey, have you tried it out yet? And I'm like, you needs to calm down. She will tell you when she's figured out, when she's had a chance. You don't need to ask her every time you see her. This is getting weird and awkward. Please stop with the condom. Also kind of love the cast of characters in here. There's like the head of security / I don't think he's actually called the sheriff, but he's kind of like the sheriff of the moon. He's his ex-Mountie, who Jazz totally fantasizes about. I'm kind of shipping the two of them together. Like, that would be sweet if that happened. Got the criminal with the law. Anyway, a huge part of this book is centered around Jazz. And I think whether or not you like this book boils down to whether or not you like Jazz as a character. And I did. She's over the top at times, and sometimes she gets annoying. I'm not going to say that she's, like, my favorite person ever, but she totally, for the most part, I would hang out with her. She'd be one of my friends that sometimes got on my nerves, but for the most part, we'd be cool. She's fun, and she's interesting. Like I said, she's a bit like Han Solo in Star Wars. He's maybe not the most responsible person there, but, like, when it counts, these guys get their act together and they figure it out. Like, Jazz actually does care about people. She cares about her community, and she feels a part of the moon. And the way that she shows it isn't always, like, traditional, though. Like, she's providing a service. These people want their cigarettes and their cigars, and she's helping them out. I mean, come on. Also, she's being practical. Like, she needs some money, because living on the moon is expensive, and she'd like to not live in a one-room, like, basically living in a train car. That's what her room is. She just got this cot in a closet, and she has to share a bathroom where she has to walk down the hall and get oogled by all these guys. So I kind of get it. Like, I would also want to improve my circumstances as well. The main plot of this book focuses around Jazz being asked to commit this heist, basically. Sabotage, really, is what Jazz gets asked to do. But it comes off as, like, a heist movie with all this, like, planning and stuff. Totally like Ocean's 11. Breaking in. Except she's not there to steal anything. She's there to kind of blow stuff up, which is also kind of fun. And I love her thinking things out and how creative she is. And she's really smart. And there's a point in this book where things go pretty badly, where everything could just go completely kaput. and Jazz is kind of responsible for that. Also might make her not the greatest character in the world, but also it's really entertaining, and I love Jazz. I love Jazz's development too. Like, she grows as a character. She messes things up so badly that she has to ask for help, and in asking help, she actually does learn more about herself and the people around her and who she can trust. I liked Artemis. I gave this book 4 stars. Jazz did get on my nerves quite a bit, so that's why it didn't get the 5 stars. I mean, this book could have been better, and if you want the better book, it's The Martian by Andy Weir. But Artemis is a pretty solid read. I enjoyed it, and I loved the caper aspect of it. And going on this adventure and really exploring the city and the characters that live there, and they're interesting and thought out and developed. And I love it. I love everything about this moon colony. Like, I would want to live there. I love the actual setup and design of the city, the actual architecture, how people are adjusting. They talk about the difference in gravity and how they deal with that with tourists coming, but also if like somebody who lived on the moon for a long time were to return to Earth, like they would also need to do an adjustment period. I love how well thought out Artemis is, and I would totally want to go visit, if not live on the moon. I mean, it's the moon, guys. Seriously. I did enjoy this book. It was fun and interesting, and Jazz's humor just makes it awesome. And it does have that feeling of, okay, something went wrong, but then now we're going to fix it. And how do we fix it? And now that we fixed it, like, it feels good and exciting and like we accomplished something, which was one of my favorite parts of The Martian. So I also appreciated that about this book. So I guess if you read both of these and you're wondering if this one stands up to The Martian, it kind of depends what your favorite parts of The Martian were. So, yeah. She does get her team together too. There is development. It's not just Jazz out on her own. She has to get her squad. Like I said, it's very Ocean's 11. Everybody working together, which I liked. Yeah. Ta-da! So there's my review for Artemis by Andy Weir. I loved it. Not everybody did. Yeah. I would recommend it if you love crazy scoundrels. If you can love a villain or a really good rogue scoundrel type character, then you could totally love Artemis. There is my review for Artemis by Andy Weir. Let me know in the comments below if you have read this or if you read The Martian and what you thought of it. Are there any other books out there that are similar to these two, especially Artemis with its heist kind of sabotage thing going on there? So, peace out. I love you guys and keep reading. Bye.